Hey, fifth grade, happy Thursday. It's Wednesday afternoon and I'm filming this video for you guys, and it's a really nice sunny day, so I'm decided to do it from the front steps of our building. So I wanted to start by thanking you all for submitting your responses of what you would measure in different units of distance. So here's a review of some of the units that people came up with. Heriberto said to me that if he was measuring how long his street was or his neighborhood, he would use miles. Genesis said to me if she was measuring this very large box of M&Ms, she would use feet. A bunch of people responded that if they were going to measure the distance of this bracelet, they would use inches. And if they were using fabric for like curtains or to make a costume for like a play or for Halloween, they would use yards. So today we're going to talk about what happens when you want to go from inches to feet or feet to yards. What if you measure something in inches, but realize you really need that unit of measurement in feet? So there are some conversions or some ways to go back and forth. So if we want to convert from inches to feet, there's a couple of things we need to know. We need to know that 1 foot equals 12 inches or 12 inches equals 1 foot. And 1 foot is the size of a ruler. So a ruler is considered 1 foot and is also 12 inches long. So this is going on the left side. When you go from 1 foot to 12 inches, you're going from the bigger unit of measure, which is feet, to the smaller unit of measure, which is inches. On the other side, we're going from the smaller unit of measure, which is inches, to 1 foot. What if I want to go from feet to yards? 1 yard equals 3 feet, or we can say 3 feet equals 1 yard. So what does that mean in terms of a ruler? If a ruler is 1 foot, 3 rulers or 3 feet equal 1 yard. Another way to say this is 1 yard equals 36 inches, or 36 inches equals 1 yard. If 1 foot is 12 inches long, and I add 12 3 times, or multiply 12 times 3, I get 36 inches. Here is a picture of a yardstick. Normally it would seem bigger, but I had to shrink the picture for it to fit. So if I took this ruler, there would be 3 rulers that would fit along this yardstick, and it measures all the way up to 36 inches, which is the same as 3 feet. That is the size of 1 yard. What if I want to go from miles to feet? I can say that 1 mile, which is really far, think about running, is 5,280 feet. So here's a picture of someone running around a track at a stadium, like at a high school. So they ran 1 mile around the track, which is 5,280 feet. We could say 5,280 feet is 1 mile. That means if I take this ruler, and a ruler is 1 foot, I would need 5,280 rulers to go around this track, which is equal to 1 mile. So now, we are going to practice today how to convert from one unit of measure to another. Here is the first problem. It's called a bulletin board. Miss K wants to put a border on the bulletin board, which is 7 feet long and 5 feet high. The border is sold by the yard. If she wants to put a border all the way around the perimeter, how many yards of border should she buy? Right now, I want you to pause and go ahead and write down everything that you notice and wonder about this problem. Okay, here are some of my notice and wonders. The bulletin board is 7 feet long and 5 feet high. Miss K is going to put a border, that's spelled wrong, around the perimeter of the bulletin board, which is all the sides. The border comes in yards, but we are measuring the perimeter of the bulletin board in feet. How will we convert the distance for the border from feet to yards? Will the amount of yards for the border be smaller or larger than the amount of feet measured. Right now, I need you to go ahead and try and solve this problem as best as you can. All right, so in this case, we're talking about a bulletin board. I want to put a border around it. Now, to put a border around it, I need to measure how much the border is going to take up, or the perimeter of the bulletin board. The problem is, if I measure it in feet, the border that I want to buy at the store only comes in yards. So the first thing I'm trying to identify is what units of distance am I changing between? And I need to change between feet and then go to yards. Because even though I might know the distance in feet of the bulletin board, that's not going to help me if at the store it comes in yards. So I'm going to draw a picture of the bulletin board. You all know what a bulletin board looks like at school. It's the shape of a rectangle, and I'm going to label it. I have 7 feet is how long it is. 5 feet is how wide it is. And I'm going to put it all the way around. So if I want to know the distance for the border, I need to calculate the perimeter of the bulletin board. So I need to add up all the sides. So I'm going to add up 7 plus 7 plus 5 plus 5. So I'm going to add it. 7 plus 7 is 14. 5 plus 5 is 10. So all together, I know the distance around the bulletin board is 24 feet. Now, I told you I need to go from feet to yards. So there's a strategy that we do this to do all types of conversions. And we do it by making 2 equivalent fractions. So watch. Pick a line for a fraction here, a line for a fraction here, and I'm going to put an equal sign in between. And I'm going from feet to yards. So I'm labeling this. I'm going feet to yards, feet to yards. So what do I know is the unit conversion between feet and yards? I'm going to think. What did I learn from the ruler? I know that 3 feet equals 1 yard. So I'm going to put that in. That's the unit conversion that I know. And if you forget it, you could go back to the video and look at it, because you're going to start to need to remember this. So 3 feet equals 1 yard. In this problem, I have 24 feet. So I'm going to put 24 feet there. But I don't know how many yards that is. But this is like solving problems involving equivalent fractions. So I'm thinking in my head, 3 to what gives me 24? Or 3 times what number gives me 24? If I roll my 3's, I know 3 times 8 gives me 24. So I have to do the same thing that I do to the numerator, I need to do to the denominator. So I'm going to multiply by 8. So I get 8 yards. 24 feet equals 8 yards. So if I go to the store and say, I need a border that covers 24 feet for a bulletin board, I really need 8 yards of border. Now, in the previous example about the bulletin board, we were going from feet to yards. We were going from feet, which is a smaller unit of measurement, to yards, which is a larger unit of measurement. That is why our answer was smaller. 8 yards is smaller because a yard is much bigger than a foot. Let's see what's going to happen in this example about hair bows. It says Norma Angeli makes hair bows to sell at the craft fair. Each bow requires 1.5 yards of ribbon. At the fabric store, ribbon is sold by the foot. If Norma Angeli wants to make 84 bows, how many feet of ribbon must she buy? Go ahead right now and write down some things you notice and wonder. Here are some things I noticed and wondered. A bow requires 1.5 yards of ribbon. Norma Angeli wants to make 84 bows. The ribbon Norma Angeli wants to buy comes in feet, but she knows how much ribbon it takes to make a bow in yards. Wonders. How will we convert the distance for the bows from yards to feet? Will the amount of feet for the bows be smaller or larger than the amount of yards known for the bows? Go ahead and pause and solve this problem and try and do it on your own using any strategy that you want. Think about how we solved the previous problem. All right, so how should we solve this problem? Again, we want to ask ourselves, what unit of measurement am I going from? And Norma Angeli knows how much yards she needs of ribbon to make the bows, but at the store, it's sold in feet. So we are going from yards to feet. Okay? So let's see, what do we know about the yards? We know one bow takes 1.5 yards of fabric, and we have 84 bows. So I could add 1.5 84 times, but that doesn't seem efficient, so I'm going to multiply. 84 times 1.5. And this is a good review of multiplying a whole number by a mixed number. So we have two number sentences here. We have 84 times 1. Remember, we have to multiply the number by both parts. And 84 times 1/2. So the first one is easy. 84 times 1 is 84. Okay? And then the second part, 84 times 1/2, you know the whole number only acts on the numerator, so that's like doing 84 halves, or 84 divided by 2. So if I do that out here, 84 divided by 2, how many times does 2 go into 8? 4 times. Get a remainder of 0. Bring down the 4. How many times does 2 go into 4? 2 times. So the answer here is 42. Now, I got to add my pieces together. 84 plus 42, and I get 126. So 84 bows require 126 yards of fabric. So in this case, I am going from yards to feet. So I'm going to make two fractions that are going to be equivalent fractions to solve this. And I'm going yards, feet, yards, feet. So, what can I do? I know 1 yard is equal to 3 feet. And I have 126 yards. So I'm asking myself, how do I get from 1 yard to 126 yards in terms of an equivalent fraction? I multiply by 126. So I'm going to do the same thing to the denominator, because whatever we do to the denominator, we have to do, whatever we do to the numerator, we have to do to the denominator. So I'm going to do this, 126 times 3. 6 times 3 is 18. Regroup the 1. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. 3 times 1 is 3. So how many feet of ribbon do I need for the bows? 378 feet, which equals 126 yards. Now I want us to think about it. Why is our answer bigger than what we started with? It's because feet is a smaller unit of measure than yards. Therefore, it's going to take more feet than yards to cover the same amount of distance. So it makes sense for our number to be bigger. It takes more feet than it does yards for this particular distance. I also want to point out that when we set up our equivalent fractions, that the units of measure in the numerator and the denominator for both fractions need to be the same. So if you put yards on top for the first fraction, yards have to be on top for the second fraction. If you put feet on the bottom for the first fraction, feet have to be on the bottom for the second fraction. So again, 378 feet equal 126 yards. Reflections after solving the big problems. When we measure distance, sometimes we measure the distance in a different unit than what we need. Therefore, we must convert the distance from one unit to another unit of distance. To convert between units of distance, we set up two equivalent fractions where the units of measure match in both the numerator and the denominator. If we are going from a smaller unit of distance to a larger unit of distance, like feet to yards, our number gets smaller. That's because if we're moving to a larger unit of distance, we don't need as much of that unit to take up that space. If we are going from a larger unit of distance to a smaller unit of distance, like yards to feet, our numbers get bigger. So think when we're going from yards to feet, like the example of the bow problem, yards are larger than feet. So we need more feet to cover the same amount of space that was covering up those yards. Here are your 3 follow-up questions. You might need to go back to remember how you get from one unit of measure to the other, which I explained earlier in the video. A ride at Six Flags says you must be 48 inches tall to ride on it. If a person is 5 feet tall, are they tall enough to go on the ride? Explain. A football field is 120 yards long. How many feet is that? Convert 2 miles to feet. If you have any questions about what I talked about in the video, please let me know by emailing me your responses or messaging me on Dojo. So I cannot wait to read your responses to those 3 follow-up questions. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will talk to you next Tuesday. Bye, guys. We are doing math, and Bucky is just sunning outside and watching the world.